Everyone who's coming into the room. Lovely to see you all. We'll do the customary thing. Anybody from Canada? No, we're a spate of Canadians. Well, they might just be on holiday in Canada, I don't know. Actually, it sounds awful, isn't it? A spate of Canadians. Like a murder of crows. Okay, just while people are slowly coming in, this is where you'll hear the doorbell as people start to enter into the room. Firstly, a massive thank you for coming along this evening and taking a part in these digital training sessions. Hopefully they've been useful so far for those that have come regularly. Those that are new to this is the first time they've come to one of my sessions. What I will say is they are done at a relaxed-ish sort of pace. However, at any point, if you go, oh, don't really get that, can you go over it again? Please do not hesitate to drop a message in the chat box and just say, go over that again. I don't get insulted by it. I do know that I do have an occasional ability to speak far too fast or move far too quick with the computer screens and whatnot. I'm going to aim to look at 4 bits of software tonight for collaboration. A few which I've kind of looked at before in the past. So those have done a lot of the training courses over the last couple of years. You may look at these and go, oh, we've kind of done these before. Use it as an opportunity to recap. I was in a school, I've been in a few school settings recently, and there's a few bits of software they're not using. I'm going, oh, I thought a lot of people were aware of this. So that's my aim. Goodbye, Kat. Later. So the aim tonight is to look at a piece of software from Office 365, a piece of software from Google, because some of you may be using Google Classroom, some may be using Teams, and then a couple of bits of third-party software, looking at Nearpod and looking at Mentee Meter. So when I say third-party, there are ones where you may have to pay a subscription fee, but I'm only going to show you the bits that are free because I am a cheapskate and I don't like to pay for things. But it's also not going to be traditionally within your school setting. There may be ones that you want to introduce to your school and show. So what I will do is I will share my screen. So hopefully in a second you will see screen 2. And on that screen, you should be able to see hopefully like a list of Office products. If you can see a list of Office products, if you could, it'd be really great if you could just give me a little thumbs up emoticon. So that means that I am showing the right thing and not talking nonsense. Thank you, Alistair. Much appreciated for that. Alistair, you're now going to be my go-to for the rest of the evening. Schoolboy error. It means I'm going to be asking you to tell me if I'm doing the right thing. So the first bit of software I want to go over tonight is I want to look at Microsoft Whiteboard. Now, Microsoft Whiteboard is found in your Office 365 setup. So if you have an Office 365 account through your school, you can find it this way. But Office 365, you can also get an account, you can log in, and it is a free option that's available. Now, when you log into the Office for the first time, what you'll see is this little 3x3 grid here at the top, and this is where you get to your app screen. Now, there are lots and lots of different apps in here, some which are useful for different things, and maybe I'll show at another time if people are interested in that. But I want to look at Whiteboard because tonight I want to look at how we can get our students to collaborate with the teacher moving into more of a facilitation role and get them to do more of the work. Because that's what we want at the end of the day. We want good critical thinkers who are working, sharing, and assisting one another. So what I do on my home screen is I just go to Whiteboard. Now, when it first comes up, it will save all of your stored whiteboards. This is something important for us to remember because sometimes if we use a Word, PowerPoint, anything like that, it will also be stored in our cloud drive, our OneDrive. But with any whiteboard tasks that we do, To get access to it and get it back again, you've got to go to Whiteboard, and that will take us to our main home screen here, which is where we got some saved ones that I'm going to look at later on today. So I'm going to start with a brand new whiteboard. So click on that lovely new whiteboard element. And this is our basic first screen. Now, the key thing I'll say straight away, if you are going to make a whiteboard, at the top here, you'll see where it says Untitled Whiteboard. I'm going to left-hand click and I'm going to give it a name. Now, sounds daft again, but it's an important thing to do straight away because the amount of times I've made a whiteboard, not given it a name, and then forgotten what it was called and unable to find it. Because that's the way I live my life. So just type in, press return, and that file is now saved. Now, the great thing with it being online is that it's auto-saved. So as soon as you make a change, it auto-saves it and does that for you. One thing with Microsoft Whiteboard, though, is that it doesn't have version history. So once a change is made, if something is deleted or removed, it's gone. You can't go back to a previous version, which you can do with the Word PowerPoint package of Office 365. So that's just one thing to be aware of. Changes that are made, they're done. They're auto-saved. So I'm just going to hide these initial panels to begin with and just go to our basic whiteboard. Now, one of the things that I always make sure, especially with my student teachers, to consider is just the background to make it clear for students. And if you do want to change it, if you're thinking of things like Erlands or good topic sensitivity, what we can do is we can go to the settings menu at the top here, and that's this little cog. And from the cog, I can go to format background. Now, I can do a few things. I can change it to a color scheme that's maybe a little bit better visually for my learners. I can also add in different shapes. If I want ruled lines, if I want grid squares, if I want dot squares, again, especially useful if you're doing mathematics or any element, that might be quite useful. Now, for those that do teach mathematics, you may see the square grid. I'll put that in for the time being and go, well, that's far too small. That's useless. I can't do that. Don't worry too much. What I'm going to do now is with the roller on my mouse, so I'm just rolling with the mouse there, I can zoom in and out and actually make that grid square a little bit bigger, a little bit clearer for people to use. So don't worry too much if you think, well, that grid square is pointless, it's far too small. Just zoom in and out. If you don't have a roller mouse, on this whiteboard, use two fingers together, and what you can do is on your tracking pad on your mouse, just push them up and down, and that will zoom in and out. The good thing with Microsoft Whiteboard is just the size of it. It's huge. So if you are working on a project and you look at that and go, well, that's not big enough really to fit everything, you can zoom in and out. And by holding down the left-hand button, the arrow turns into a little fist and I can move it around the screen. So don't worry too much about the size of it, because we can add bits and we can move around as much as possible. And that's good for us to consider as we progress. So next up, let's look at some of the tools that we have on Whiteboard. At the moment, the basic pen tools that we have are just your pen. If you click on that one there, you can change the color, you can change the thickness. And what I would say, again, a little tip with this one is, yes, it's great. You can write like this. You can go, hello. Actually, I better make sure I finish that, else I'll just get hell. But top tip, really only use it if you have a stylus. It's something to use if you've got an iPad or an Android tablet, because it looks a little bit naff, I'll be honest. There's a reason why they have the pens, and I think the pens are useful, and that's an element I'm going to show you in a minute. You've got the felt tip pen. You've got this kind of galaxy pen if you want to get a little bit crazy. And then you've got a highlighter, particularly useful if I want to go over elements in my text that I think are useful. So I can use a highlighter there, change the color of the highlighter. So if someone's written a really good comment and I want to highlight it, I can do that on my board. And then I've got the eraser if I want to get bits removed. Now it doesn't erase it like a colouring in pen, it gets rid of the shapes that you've made. So the lasso is where we have our cuts. If I just go back to our hello, there we go, lovely. The lasso is to select certain elements. Now, I will say this is a bit of a limitation. It's an element for you to practice on because it's a little bit rubbish. The lasso, you've got to kind of like draw around what you want to get rid of, and then you can play around with it. But it's, I would say personally, it's not the easiest tool to use. And it's just something to get used to. So get a little bit of practice with that. It's okay, but it does need a little bit of work. But what you can do is if you do lasso it, I can copy elements and I can paste bits that I have copied and played around with. So that's the lasso section. The ruler is a section that is coming soon. It's on the American version. It's not yet on the UK version, but the ruler is something which, when I've seen it in practice, it's quite good for if you're doing the mathematics element, shapes, maybe use a ruler for bits and pieces. But when that comes in, I will make sure I do like a little bit of a recap video to show how that is used. So that's our basic features. What I will do though is I will just get rid of them because I don't need them now. So there, I'll just delete them. The next section underneath is the create box, and this is where you can start to have a little bit of fun. You can start to think about your collaborative activities moving forward. So from a basic sense, you've got your notes. Now you've got your individual post-it notes, which if I want to put a post-it note on, I click on the post-it note and I click on the screen as to where I want it to go. Let me just zoom out a little bit. I can resize this, I can move it, I can then type into that box. So from that, if I want to, I can change the color. Doesn't let you change the font or anything. So if, like, I know that Comic Sans is something that is a little bit more dyslexia friendly, fortunately it doesn't allow you to do that. This is again a limitation. I want to make us aware of these limitations. And I can edit what's called alternative text. This is a useful feature I'm going to show later on, but it's something key for us to remember, especially when we're trying to think of how to make it a little bit beneficial for learners. So again, if I want to put a post-it note, I click on the post-it note, click on the page, add it in. There we go. You've also got these note grids. So if I want to put 4 on at once, so if you're doing an activity and you want a series of ideas, I can put 4 on at once if I want to. And that, again, that's something for you to consider and think about, where would that be beneficial. I can type in text directly. So if I, like I said, with the handwriting pen, it's a little bit rubbish, but I can just type in as normal text and I can change the color of it. And if I want to make it larger, again, you just extend the size of that box like you would with any other picture screen. I can add shapes, particularly useful if you're doing any sort of geometry or you want to make like a little bit of a flow chart, bits and pieces. And again, if I want to add shapes in, just like with normal ones, I copy and paste. I can change the color. I can make that a little bit easier, or whatever is useful for you. Now it has got these reaction elements that I can add to bits and pieces. So if I do like something, I can give it a little reaction. That's quite useful if you're thinking of some sort of like voting activity, or if you've got a team activity where they're working on a project and they've got some ideas on a thought shower board. Maybe you can get the students to go, okay, well, add a reaction. Which one do you think is great? Or if you want to give a round of applause, or I love this idea. Oh, I love this triangle. Brilliant. So you can use it as like a little bit of a voting panel, really. Image-wise, this is where I would say Jamboard beats the Microsoft Whiteboard version. I will show this with the Jamboard again. With the images, you've got to have them already as something that's on your computer. So it's got to be something, so if I go to pictures, I can put in So I can take a picture that I already have. Why I've, when you go, why do I have that picture in my computer? I just do. It's just a giraffe with a cat face. So I can input that way. I can also, if I go to, say I go to google.com and I go to images, I can just take an image. There you go. Oh, that's a nice one. I can just copy and paste straight into the whiteboard. So you can do that. Where I think Jamboard beats it is that it's built in with the Google images already in it. And I'm going to show that later on. Under templates, this is something that is, I think is a real beneficial, especially if you're a little bit worried about creating elements on whiteboard. Maybe it's your first time of using these collaborative boards and you're a bit unsure how to design them. The templates are really useful. What I'll do is I'm just going to move that to one side. There we go. Now with the templates, it has these pre-built in little elements for you. And this is useful if you're thinking of making some tasks for your students. So let's say, for example, you want to do let's go to learning, and you want to do, a brainstorm activity. I just select it and I drop. And I just left-hand click where I want it to go. And what this builds for me is a little pre-built activity. And I just literally drag and drop, and I can type in to this boxes the elements I want to put in. It has a few in here, so it has these design and research grids, it has these models already made, and it has some games and ideas of what you could use. And this is quite a nice little feature of the whiteboard if you're unsure on how to build them, if you've never built them before. The final element that you have with the whiteboard is its use of ability to import documents. And I think this is a real winning feature, especially if you want to take something that you've taught with your learners and get them to collaborate at a later stage. So let's say, for example, I had my students work on a presentation. So what I'll do is I'll pick a presentation that I've delivered, and say there's an element of that presentation. I go, I wouldn't mind them working together as a team on that topic. Let's try and pick one that's actually mine. So what I'll do is I will find, let's just pick this one. I can pick a PowerPoint presentation. And then what I can do is from that, I can select what page I want to input into my whiteboard. So let's say, for example, this slide here. I then insert that one slide. And what it does is it takes it as a picture. And then I can put underneath, I can put a little text question going, what do the images describe? Again, I can make this a little bit bigger. So I can take something in my classroom and I can do it as a bolt-on for that next element for them to think about. Maybe I've got a picture that I want them to describe words of, maybe they're doing some poetry and I have a picture of a tree that was in one of my slides or a few pictures together. So you're not recreating stuff over and over again, you're using existing tools that you have. You can also input Word documents, PDFs, quite a few elements in there. So it's about using what you already have to help boost your presentation. Now, they're the basic features that you get with Whiteboard, and I think that's quite a nice thing that there's not too much with it. I know they are adding more elements to it as they go, but at the moment it's nice and clear. So let's see what else we can do with this. So I'm going to go back to, made that far too small, there we go. So what else can we do with this? Now, one of the things I showed a few weeks ago, one of the sessions, was the use of Venn diagrams as a collaborative tool. Now, what I was, if you follow, there's a few people on Twitter. One of the people I followed on Twitter, she put a thing up the other day saying, when doing a Venn diagram for collaboration, don't make circles, make squares or rectangles. And I was a bit unsure as what she meant by this. But the issue she always found was that when she did a Venn diagram with a circle, because the post-it notes are square, it doesn't fit very neatly and you can't see the lines very well. I went, oh, that's a good point. So I'm going to make a Venn diagram, but I'm going to make it of rectangles. So what I can do here is there's my shape. I'm going to make it with no fill, because that's important. Remember, there's no fill. And then I'm going to copy this element and I'm going to paste. So I've got exactly the same shape. So now I have my Venn diagram and I'm going to put some text in here. So I'm going to say the features of a coach. Make that a little bit smaller. And I'm going to put up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this so it's all set up. I like it to be the same font size. I'm going to say features of a mentor, and then I'm going to have the same. Now what I've done here is I'm now asking the students, I can send this to the students, I can get them to collaborate on this, and they can come in, they can put post-it notes into each of these boxes. And I've made this resource, I've made a collaborative tool for them. The other thing that you can do that's useful with this whiteboard is I can go to, let's make a small activity. Do you know what? Actually, I'm going to save that small activity for the Jamboard. What I'll do is I'll show you how you can share this. So let's set this out for you. I'm going to share it with you. And my job is I'm going to ask you to collaborate and add some post-it notes. What do you think are the key features of someone who is a coach? Key features of someone who's a mentor? And what sort of things are in the middle of the same? Now to share this with you, I go to this little arrow at the top. And then what I do is I have to turn the share link on. Once the share link's on, it means that people can collaborate and they can add bits to it. I then have the right as the administrator and the creator of this whiteboard to turn that share link off, which means say I want it for an hour's session, I can turn the share link off and people can't go in and change it. They can't delete bits. That is a really good feature of Whiteboard, and I think it's not on Jamboard, but it's a really great feature of Whiteboard. I'm now going to copy this link. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into the chat box. Now this may work with you, it may not, we'll find out, because this is going from my work account, which means that only those maybe can kind of engage with it. We'll find out. But if you want to click on that link and see if you have access to it, if you don't, do not worry. But that's how you create that share link very nicely and very easily. So if you do want to click on that link, it's in the chat box. See if you can get access. If you can't, don't worry about it. If you can't get access, just pop it in the chat box for me and I can deal with it another time. It's absolutely fine. So pop in the chat box, see if you can add some features to that board. No access. Thank you so much for that, Alistair. Yeah, it's only because with my 365, you've got to have a 365 account for my establishment. But that's, if you were going to share it, that's how you would do it. Just share it that way. There is another feature as well, which I think is a really nice one. I've just noticed it in the last week with Google Chrome. If you've never used Google Chrome before, when you go to your address bar at the top, if you click on that address bar, you'll see this little logo here, this little 4 squares. If you click that, it creates for you now a QR code. And this is something that, again, power of Twitter, please use Twitter. It's got some great bits and pieces if you follow the right people. But I can now create an instant QR code. And that QR code, I don't have to go for a QR reader website, I don't have to go for a third party, but that's built into Google Chrome. You won't see it on Internet Explorer, you won't see it on Firefox. But that QR code reader, again, you just click on the address bar and you'll see those 4 little squares. And that's quite a little cheeky little thing that's been added to Chrome. I like that. Got a lot of time for it. Now, like I said, if I exit that now I go back to my main home screen. There's my whiteboard. There it is. And because I've added a name to it, these ones I didn't add a name to it, as you can see. Well done, good work. But there's my whiteboard and it is saved. Now with this one, once you've created it, what you may want to do is go, well, what's the next step? How do I take it forward? And say, for example, I want to print this out. Now, if I go to my settings here, I can go to export the image. Hit export image, and then I'll go standard resolution because I want it as good for email. And what this does is it turns it into a PNG file. So there's my file, and it's now saved it. If I just put that on my screen, it's saved it as a large image for me. So if you do have any work created by your students and you want to save it as a PDF at a later stage, and you want to save it as a photo or share it as an email, maybe upload it to your Moodle page, you can do that with Moodle, with Whiteboard, and that's a really nice feature. Now, just before I move away from Whiteboard, one of the things I said earlier was the alternate text. And this is something that's going to become a lot more prevalent with digital competency in your classroom. That is, how do you get your assistive learning scores higher? Now, with Whiteboard, again, something that trumps a lot of other software, if I click on an image, I can click on what's called alternate text. And what it asks you here is, how would you describe this object in its context to someone who is blind? So if I say it's a giraffe with a cat's head, save it. It means that those that use assistive technology, and what happens there is when they hover over it, someone may read to them, or it may come up on braille machines that tells them what the image is. I can add that to my images that are in there. And this is something that I see a lot with the Office 365 packages and not with others. You may also want to consider it with regards to if there's a translation you want to add to it, you can add alternate text in. So now those learners have got access to seeing what the images are. And that's a nice little feature of Office 365 that you don't see in any other software at the moment that's used in schools. So it's quite nice. Before I move on to Jamboard, is there any other questions about Whiteboard? Please pop them in the chat box before I move on to the next one, and that'll be really much appreciated. Nope, I take that as everybody thinks that was wonderful and amazing. So that's my evaluation. Now, the reason I'm showing Jamboard as well as Whiteboard is because, oh, great question here. Do you have to be on a specific site to share before you can get a QR code on Chrome? No. Make sure your Chrome is updated to the latest version. That's the key thing. But it was something that I hadn't personally added. I saw it on Twitter and I went, oh, I wonder if I've got that, and I had. So just make sure your Chrome is updated to the most recent version, and that should be there. Again, just click in the address bar and it's there. So I've not added anything. I've not downloaded an app. That should be in there. But great question. Thank you. It's on Edge as well. So my Kindle is telling me that it's on Edge as well. So thank you for that, Alistair. So for those that use Microsoft Edge, it's also on there. There we go. Taking all the money from qrreader.com. Now, the reason I want to show Jamboard is because I think there are many strengths with the Whiteboard and there are many strengths with the Jamboard, but there are limitations between the two. And it's quite useful to think which one will be beneficial for my learners. Now, with Jamboard, if I make a jam, I'll make one up here. Hit the plus symbol, bottom right hand corner, and I'm going to go to new jam. What I'll try and do is I'll just kind of guide through some of the very similar features. I'll show you what they are. So it has the pen, which you can write. It has the highlighter, has a paintbrush, has the eraser, has the sticky notes. Again, very much the same as on the Whiteboard one. So I can make a sticky note and go, sticky notes. There we go. and I can add these to my board. Now, the thing with Whiteboard, as you'll notice straight away, is the size of it. It's not unlimited like the Whiteboard one. The Jamboard one is set to a certain size, but you can still zoom in and zoom out. Now, when I said about adding image, this is where Jamboard trumps Whiteboard. And because it's made by Google, I can upload images, I can search by URL, but I can also go through Google Images. So if I want a cat giraffe head, I can look for a cat with a giraffe. It's not going to be the most prevalent. Yeah, I'll put that lad in. So if you're thinking about your learners and that ICT competency, this is going to be, they're not going to have to find one, copy and paste it, maybe save it to the desktop, maybe add it. I think this is where it really trumps it. Is because it's powered by Google, it has that add image. It also has its shapes. So very much like with the last one, I can make my Venn diagram. Now, if I do want to make my Venn diagram, I click on the shape, and at the top I go to fill color, and I'm going to make it transparent. Same as last time, I'm going to copy and paste it, keep it the same, and there we go. I've got my two shapes there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a small activity, and you're going to identify, firstly, one of the big limitations. First one who spots the limitation wins a prize. So what I will do is, firstly, you're going to have to apologize for my amazing ability this is my Welsh skills at their absolute maximum. This is where everyone starts getting their Welsh dictionary out, and what I will say to you is don't. This is a test of your ability. Okay. So I'm going to make a matching exercise for my teams, for my students. And what I'm going to ask them to do is I'm going to ask them to go on the board, and let me just write my instructions in. I'll go to my text board. So find an image that is the same as the Welsh, nearly, as the Welsh word, and add a link arrow. Okay, so let's say this is my activity. So what I want them to do is I want them to add an image underneath here, add a link arrow between what these products are that they may find in a supermarket. Now, with this one again, I'm going to go to share. At the moment, it's private only to me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to anyone with a link. So I can do this with this one, not my Whiteboard one, which is restricted. I'm going to change it from viewer to editor. And again, this is where with the last one, the link would, I could turn the sharing link off. If you want them to stop editing it, what you would do is you would go to that share, anyone with a link, and you change it to viewer. So say, for example, you have a collaboration class for an hour, and at the end of that class, you don't want them to go back in and start messing around, change the link from editor to viewer. If you want them to play with it, make sure it's an editor. I'm going to copy that link, and I'm going to put it into the chat box. So what I'd like you to do is have a go of adding an image underneath that you think represents one of those Welsh words. Now, with the way I've done it at the moment, I've set it that anyone can log in. You don't need a Google Chrome account. I can restrict that though, so I can hit share, and I can change it to anyone restricted to anyone who's like within my settings. So I can change that, and I'll show that in a minute. So here we go. This is quite good. I have got my notes next to me, so I know if you got the right one. This is some fantastic work. If anyone asks, what you did tonight, just say, I found pictures of milk and added them to a board. And what I'd love to do, anyone who's watching this, start thinking of the limitations in the box below. You find the limitation, you win a prize. Because I found one straight away, and it's always interesting. Think about your own classroom, what that limitation could be. Okay, that's not bad. Now, the first thing that I thought of when I looked at this, I was thinking, what size is my classroom? Someone copied my arrow. It's really easy to delete other people's work. Yeah, totally. Images overlay each other. One of the first thing that I really picked up on was that if I've got 30 people in a classroom, you know, and I only want 6 to work on a project, or maybe 4 to work on a project, if you've got everyone involved, you're going to end up with massive pictures of bread, you know, far too many pictures of bread. I think there were about 4 glasses of milk flying around the page at one time. That's it. More than one person could be getting the picture. Now, this is where Jamboard trumps Whiteboard. And I will show you why. What I've done here is, the great thing I love with the Jamboard is that it's not just one board per activity. I can make multiple boards on one activity. So let's say, for example, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw everyone's picture down the bottom, because it's all about me. And what I want to do is, just using the arrow, oh, just go reload it. This is because everyone's gone a bit gung-ho. And I'm going to copy these elements here. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to copy, and then see where it says next frame here. I can paste in the elements from my activity. Again, it's probably easier. The one thing I would say with this is that you can't just go, you can hold down Control and select multiple. You can kind of duplicate, or you can order them, but you can't group them. That's a bit of a problem with this. All I can do is I can have one activity and I can have it on multiple slides. So what I could do is I could have this one here. I could put group 2. I could have one as group 1. I could say, okay, when you guys go on group 1. Now, what this means is then when people go on, I could say, well, I'd like 3 of you to be on page 2, some of you to be on page 1. And this is something that I've done on a larger project. We had 100 students, and they had 8 Jamboards going. Laura's put a great point on it, going, this is potentially pretty time consuming if this was done during a lesson. Yes, definitely. Get it all set up way beforehand. The other thing with Jamboard, what you can do, let's say, for example, I've made this material. I'm just going to delete everyone's work. Really sorry, everybody. It was lovely. Now, say I made this as an activity. And I'm just going to call this one Welsh matching. And I'm going to spell Welsh correctly. Hit OK, there we go. I'm going to go back to my Jamboard. Now, there's my Welsh matching. Now, this is where it's kind of useful in terms of, I can take this one and I could go into it, and I could, so if I open it back up, I could copy these elements and I could paste them into another one, but I could make quite a few. What would probably be easier actually is if I did a print screen. So if I did a print screen right now, which I've just done, so on your keyboard you've got print screen, I can go to a new Jamboard. So let's make a new jam. I'm going to paste in that picture that I've got there, and I can edit that down once I've made my screen. So can I edit this one down? Hopefully I can. What you can do is you can make multiple different boards at one time. And I can send a link out to one group, link out to another group, and link out to another one once it's made beforehand. And I can ping that out to them then. So that's one of the real kind of benefits of the Jamboard, or you can make it previously and have it that way there. So it's quite nice for them to engage with. So there are quite a few benefits of Jamboard with regards to using Whiteboard, but again, think about where it's going to be useful for you. Any questions at all about the collaboration boards on there? Yeah, they're separate links then. So that helps make sure that you know who's going on one, who's going on another. Is it possible to know who types what? Yes. This is the one thing with, if you go through Google, so if I go to share and I can go to restrict, and at the moment I've got it set it for public links. So if I go to editor, I can share it with groups. Now, if I've already got this set up with my Google Classroom, I can either send it to certain people. So I type in their email address, or if I type it into, so I can send it to them, or if I've got a group set up on my Google Classroom, then I know exactly who's logging in because their little names will come up on here at the top. So if I want to have it so I know exactly who did what, it will tell me when I link it through my Google Classroom. So I haven't got this one set up for that. And you're all accessing the same board. You can do it on a mobile phone, you can do it on a tablet, and that's really useful for that. So Elizabeth, you've asked a question, how are you all accessing the same board? So to access the same board, I've just put the link in the chat box. So if I put the link in the chat box, I'll try it again on this one. You can all click on that and you can all view the board. What I'll do is, actually, I'll change it so you're a viewer. So I can show that when you go onto this, there you go, but you guys won't be able to type anything in, but you'll be able to see what I've put in there. And then I can go to my share link and I can update the link to editor, which means now you guys can add anything you want to that screen. So as you can see, I can see who's doing what, see that little name there at the top. At the moment, you're all anonymous, but through your Google Classroom, it'll be the names of the individuals. And that's using Jamboard, which is a really nice little thing. Any other questions, please whack them in the chat box, and then I'll move on to my next little element for some of you. Okay. Thank you so much for your questions and feedback. Oh, can you run through how to add arrows, please? Yes. So if you want to add an arrow, what I would say here is you can add it as a shape. But if you want to change it, there's a little, it's only in one of the corners. They have that little blah, 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 blah thing there. And you can spin it. So you can do it that way. Something to remember, if I just go back to Whiteboard, this is, thank you, Rianne, before I forget. One of the features I quite liked on Whiteboard, which isn't on the Jamboard, is when I go to my pen, you'll see one of them has that little arrow there. So if I click on that, what I can do is I can have an arrow tip, or I can have two arrow tips, and actually I can draw, and it puts a little arrow on it. So that's one of the things on Whiteboard, not on Jamboard. So if they're doing like a thought shower, if they're doing some mind maps, that's quite a nice little feature that you can add on there. Okay. Now, the next tool I want to look at again is something that I've gone through before in the past. And I'm going to look at Mentee Meter again, because I think a few people are aware of it and a lot of people aren't really aware of it that much. And it's a third-party application. Now, I'm only going to be showing the basic package because it's free. We want it to be free. But Mentee Meter is a great way of collaborating with your learners, those quick snapshot activities. It's something you can make, send it out, and get some quick snapshot ideas. Great for initial assessments, as well as your formative and your summative assessments in your lessons. So I'm going to go to menteemeter.com. I'm going to go to new presentation. I'm going to call this one NEU Thursday because that's original. I'm going to make this presentation. Now, the first thing I would say with Mentee Meter, think of it very much like your PowerPoint layout, in that the left-hand side are the slides that you have, the slides or the activities. The center screen is the one you're working on at the moment, and then the right-hand screen are your ideas. Now, with Mentee Meter, it's very much like a polling and collaboration activity. So what I can do is, I'm just going to start off with one slide. And I'm going to go for, let's go for a scales. So let's think of, I want to do something for how people are feeling today. So how are you feeling? So I'm going to say this morning, I'm going to put this afternoon and this evening, because I want to get a scale. I can add statements, I can remove statements if I don't want them in. That's not a problem. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some labels. Awful. And I'm going to have to just great. And I'm going to add a value on this one here. So I'm going to say up to a score of 10. I'm also going to click show the total average. So that's one little feature. Now, with the basic package of Mentee Meter is that you can get 3 slides in one activity. You can have as many individual presentations as you want, but you get 3 slides per activity. So I'm now going to go to add slide. And there's so many different little options here that you can use for your learners. Think about the scenarios that you're in. So say, for example, I want them to collaborate on a word cloud. And I'm going to have the question to be, describe the woods. Now, I can add a picture if I want to. So I can either go to, I can upload one, I can go to the image library that's there. So I can go to woods. Say I want them to do a poetry class, basically. I'm going to get you guys to do a bit of poetry. Yeah, that'll do. Square, freeform. I'm going to save that. It does allow for alternate text as well, which is a nice little feature. But I'm going to get a little bit of a word cloud going because I want them to collaborate and discuss what the woods are like for them. I'm going to allow them 2 entries. And then I'm going to add one more slide because you get 3 for your basic package. And then I'm going to have a little bit of an open-ended. So, other digital tools you like to learn. And I'm going to have it as speech bubbles. I quite like speech bubbles. So what I've made here is my nice little presentation. I'm going to share this with you because I do want to get your views. I want to see what you think, and you'll be able to see on my screen how this looks to you. So I'm going to go to present. Now I can hit present, and what this has done, this is my teacher screen. This is what I see on my screen. So I can go through, as you see here, the slides. So I move through them as and when I feel ready to go this. Now, what I would say to you is you can do a couple of things. You can either go to mentee.com, maybe do it on your phone and type in that code, or if you want, you can use the link that comes up and I've just put on the screen. So if you do want to log in, have a think of this. Again, this is anonymous, and this is the key thing to remember, as opposed to Jamboard or Whiteboard where I could see who put what. This I can't. But it's a great way of getting some feedback from students. Maybe you do, you know, how are you getting on with the assignment, or how are you getting on with your assessment, or you know, just how are things in general. People may ask, how's Steve the dog? And he's okay. He's currently asleep. But what you can see, this is my teacher screen right now. I'm presenting it. I can do it online or I can do it in the classroom, but I get this rough gist of going on. So this morning, the average at the moment is a 4.8, but this evening, 7.3. Is that because it's dinner time? Or I can see on my screen that 10 people have engaged. Thank you very much. I can see where, if I hover my mouse over, I can see where people are going. So I've got one person's put a 10. Brilliant. Now, what I can do with this one is I can start a countdown. So if I am getting, it's because Friday is drawing near. Yay, but I can put a little countdown on there. So if I am getting them to think, I need them to hurry up, especially if it's online, I can put a little countdown on there. Elizabeth is knackered, mate. I like that one. I can also close the voting. So if I've had enough and I go, yeah, I can stop the voting and go, okay. But I can open it back up again by pressing C. Now, what I can then do as the teacher that's in charge of this, I can hit that next arrow. And those that are still logged in, I can get you can still add. And I'd like you to describe the woods, because this is our poetry class here. So describe the woods. You get 3 words. If you want to see the picture that I've done there, what I can do is I can just go, oh, look at that, that's a lovely picture. There we go, and I can go back to it. So again, this is something that's really nice, especially if you're maybe doing a literacy task or you just kind of go, oh, let's think of some adjectives, or let's think of some cool, adverbs to describe how you run or something. And you can start to get this word board that's building up, and then go, okay, I'd like you to go away now and in your groups, look at some of the words that your team have collaborated with on the board. How could you use them? I'm going to use, that's a really good word, or that's a really good word. So we're getting them to use digital tools as a launch pad for collaboration. They're sharing as a group, critically thinking, and moving forward. I've got 7 people. Mesmerizing. I like the idea of the mesmerizing woods. Now, what I can do again as the presenter is I can hide the votes. I can share the screen. I can close it down. So if I want to show a blank screen, if I want them just to go, look, stop focusing on that board and focus on me, I can just go, hang on a second, it's all about me. But I can press B and it goes back to where we were. So let's go to our final screen here. And this is really just for me. What other digital tools would you like to learn? Please pop it on here, because I'll be using this later on. Is there anything else that you go, I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more about that? What can I do to help support you guys in the progress that you're making in your settings? Share on the screen. If you've not added one so far, you can either go to mentee.com, maybe do it on your phone or your tablet and enter that code, or I'll just put the copy link back into the chat box and you can click on that. That takes you through. Anything new, really? I like that one. OneNote, yes. Oh yeah, OneNote's a great one. I think that is on the plans. Canva, people love Canva. Oh, I'd like to do Canva again. Yeah, Flipgrid. It's like a conversation, that one. I like that one. Anything with VR. Brilliant. This is good. The VR one, I'll be honest, that won't be with me, I'm afraid. I am not versed in VR. Many apologies, but maybe that's something I can just drop to Beth and go, find someone with VR. Okay. So, if you do have any more stuff you want to share, please again use that link. It will be open. Or I am available if you use Twitter. I am on there. I will put it in the chat box. Please, more than happy to listen to what anyone says. If you've got any ideas, you've got any problems, put them on there. I do listen. Someone did ask for a list the other day, and many apologies. I went, yes, of course I can send you some stuff, and then didn't. That's not being rude, but it is. I just completely forgot. But I will get round to it. But hopefully I'll take some of these ideas here and see you in the next week. So the next step now is to really, again, think about, this is great, this is lovely, but what does this mean for us as a teacher? How can I use this going forward? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to exit out of Mentee Meter. And if I go back to my presentations, this is one of the great things about this tool, is it saves, you know, I've been using Mentee Meter for, if I go back to load all my presentations, 2018, I was using Mentee Meter then. I can go back, I can look at those slides. So what I can do is I can go to one that I've already created. I can export the results. So you can give it to me as a presentation screenshot, which I can download as a PDF. It can give it to me as a spreadsheet if I want to share the answers. Also, if I've delivered it multiple times, so if I go to one that I've done a few times now, it will show me every time I've delivered that presentation. So let's go to one that I've done a few times. I don't think I've done that one a few times, but it will show me ones that I've done multiple times and give me those individual results as I go through. And this is one of the nice things with Mentee Meter. You can make this, save it on here, and use it again and again and again. So that's a really useful element of Mentee Meter. If I do have one on here, it's there for me to use. I can make the themes, so I can change the background color if I do want to make it. So I can create a new, not create a new theme, but I can change the background colors. Of course, I go pick the one that you have to pay for, but it is a really nice feature there. Presenter pace, it needs me. I can change it to audience pace if I'm going to be using it as an asynchronous tool in my classroom, and that's something that we can be using. If you have any questions about Mentee Meter, please pop them in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to answer them. I hope the tools today have been useful for you, and it's something that you can go forward with and take into your next sessions. And I really look forward to you for next week's session, which will be on, Lisa will be sending out later on. So thank you so much for that, guys. You look after yourselves. Any questions, pop them in the chat box, and I will see you all later on. Thank you. Really appreciate that, guys. Thank you.